The investigation continues into a devastating house fire this week that killed 9 people in a First Nations community in Ontario. 3 generations of a family died in the fire. There are no firefighting services in the community, and 95% of the homes don't have running water. The tragedy has swung a glaring spotlight back onto the systemic problems facing First Nations communities across the country and underlines the question, why do many reserves still lack the most basic of resources? We're joined again by our Sunday Scrum panelists, Susan Riley, John Ibbotson in Ottawa, Martin Patriquin in Montreal. So Susan, I mean, you look at some of these images and you hear these stories and you think, wow, like nothing has changed in decades and decades. How could this be?
I know these are horribly cyclical stories that come up. We all express alarm and dismay. Life goes on until the next one. I mean, it's really discouraging. I find it almost quite hopeless, too. I'm not sure what else, if anything, any government, federal government that is, can do about this. There have been all sorts of, we've had a number of prime ministers for whom this has been an immediate personal concern. They're not just faking their concern. Jean Chrétien was one of them. He once said that one of the greatest disappointments of his time in office was that he wasn't able to make things better for Indigenous people. Paul Martin was very, it remained after he left office very concerned, particularly with Indigenous education. We have in Carolyn Bennett a very sincere Indigenous Affairs Minister right now. Justin Trudeau has made a point of saying that this is one of his priorities.
He said it's the most important relationship. His relationship with the First Nations peoples, it's the most important relationship for him.
And Mr. Harper, too, took it very seriously. He had a different approach from the Liberals, ideologically, obviously, but I don't think it's fair to say that he was unconcerned. I think they've all been concerned. There've been a lot of money spent, and nothing gets better. Oh. And what that tells me is that the solutions lie within the communities themselves, among First Nations themselves. I'm not saying that the federal government and everybody else washes their hands of the problem. I'm just saying that it has to be a ground-up. I become more and more convinced that it has to be a ground-up solution, or nothing will ever change.
All right, before we continue, this was Prime Minister Trudeau offering his condolences on Wednesday, saying his government is working to provide better infrastructure on reserves.
We continue to be engaged with provincial and Indigenous leadership on how to build better infrastructure, how to secure a future for Indigenous youth and their communities, because this is not just about the moral right thing to do, it's about investing in our shared future in this country.
So, John, do you share Susan's pessimism that this can be hopeless, that there are good intentions from a lot of different prime ministers, and yet still we see these horrible, and I mean the scabies in Saskatchewan, that 11-year-old girl where a 14-year-old is accused of murdering her, the La Loche. I mean, this has all kind of happened under this new government.
Well, let's not blame this new government.
No, I'm not trying to suggest that. I'm just saying, no, not at all. But I'm just saying that there's a lot has happened in the last few months.
Absolutely, and it is incredibly frustrating. Let's remember a couple of things. First of all, there are also a great many reserves where none of this is happening. They tend to be reserves in southern Canada, close to urban areas, where there's economic development, where there's education, where there's running water, where there are all the things that you would expect to find in southern Canada. These are reserves in remote and isolated areas. Part of the question is capacity building. Look, it's not that all the Canadian governments up until today had no interest whatsoever in putting running water into reserves. But if you put a water filtration plant onto a reserve, then you have to build the capacity to manage it, to run the thing. It's skilled, and very often the thing breaks down and there's no one to fix it. You build houses. If the houses aren't properly maintained, then they get mold and they break down. If you build a school, what good is the school if you don't have teachers who are prepared to work and stay in the community to teach the children? All of these problems are linked to remoteness. I think Susan is right. The solution can't be us, especially a bunch of pundits in Ottawa, saying what they think needs to be done. The solution has to lie with the First Nations themselves in those communities. This government says that the solution lies as well in transferring more autonomy, more sovereignty, more control to those reserves. as well as more money. I hope to God they're right, because no one here wants anything other than success for these as well as other reserves.
Marty, we know that the federal government, they've earmarked $8 billion in support for Aboriginal communities. But will it roll out fast enough to address immediate concerns? Because on the one hand, you have Aboriginal leaders saying $8 billion is a lot of money, and on the other hand saying, wait a second, we may have to wait years for some of this money, or a lot of this money.
Look, if the past is any indication, I was in Pekanjikam in 2012, and the story there was, the last minister to visit there was Jim Prentice in 2006, if I'm not mistaken, announcing a lot of the same stuff, infrastructure money, et cetera, water, filtration, whatever. And the story that everybody remembers is that he had to use the washroom at one point and was forced to use one of these overflowing porta potties, basically. And it's sort of a grim joke in there, is that he made this announcement and absolutely nothing has changed. So I'm not sure if money certainly isn't the sole solution. Just on the point of governance, in Pekanjikam there are about 16 families with family names, and they're not necessarily all related. Of those 16, a fraction of them are actually only allowed to run for council. And so you have an entire population that is disenfranchised from running its own government.
Why?
And it becomes, because that's the way it's always been. It's just always been like that. And you have issues of favoritism. I mean, I walk there, and you walk into these areas where there's entire communities that basically look like suburbs, where these houses are absolutely gorgeous. Everybody on that street is related to the chief at the time. That sort of thing happens at a local level, and that is a huge problem. And it's a difficult one to address, because it's not necessarily the most PC thing to say that the problem is with the native community itself. But that is an issue in these communities, and the people that I've spoken to with there have said that time and again.
Interesting. All right.
Well, I heard
go ahead,
Eric
Susan, on last
Hoskins.
point.
I heard Eric Hoskins this week, the health minister for Ontario. That's where this reserve was located. He's also happens to be a public health doctor, and he was talking about the urgency of getting public health nurses and doctors essentially to some of these more remote communities, and then inducing them to stay. That's the wrong approach. What I think would be the smarter approach would be to train people from those communities to be doctors, nurses, or paramedical, to give paramedical help of some kind anyway. That's really going to take a long time, but it can happen. There's a reserve about 90 kilometers.
And to stay there, Susan, or to leave?
To stay, but if you're from there, you're more inclined to stay.
Right.
And an example, there's a reserve about 90 kilometers north of Ottawa, Maniwaki, and the chief there, Gilbert Whiteduck, has really encouraged education, and a number of the young people from the reserve have come down to the Ottawa area, gone to community college here, become nurses, technicians, nurses' aides, and then gone back to the reserve, because it's a beautiful part of the country, because there's going to be a job there for them, and they're rooted in the community, so they're going to stay. And if that could be replicated, that would solve a lot of those issues.
A final thought from you, Marty.
Yeah, just on the question of education, and Susan's absolutely right. When you go there, and there's something in the order of 30 or 40 teachers that live in the area. Every single one of them is white, and every single one of them is from somewhere in Ontario and going there to do a stage. I don't know how to say that in English.
An internship or something.
An internship, basically, to do some of their training, and they're lovely people, and they have the best of intentions, but they're literally going to be there for a year and a half, 2 years at most. And I talked to one teacher about it. It's like, one thing I would like to do is not for me not to have this opportunity to do what I'm doing and go back to wherever, Sudbury or Southern Ontario. I would like someone from the community to have my job and stay here.
I think we could talk about these issues all day. They're important.